couple of very silly questions. How do you drag the icons? Post-its?
You should be allowed, you mean to move them?
No, can't do that.
Okay. What about creating new ones?
No.
No? Okay.
Are you in this guest?
I'm the guest.
Oh, yeah, you need to be a registered user.
Registered user, so it can't.
Oh, let me do this. If I change this one with the link and edit.
I think that's my fault. Sorry.
Okay.
And how do you create the post-its?
I think you have a bar here on the left-hand side.
That, or if you just click on one of them, you can copy it and then you can fill out the information.
Yeah, the reason why I wouldn't recommend this is that if you copy a post-it that I've created, I cannot trace back to you. I mean, yeah, probably there is a updating version created. It gets your metadata. If you copy a post-it from mine, it gets my metadata. But again, it's not a big deal. We'll figure it out anyway. So the
Control the arrows?
arrows, I think you can simply click on a post-it. There's a little pin icon here. So, at this point, I think I'll hand over to Christophe and Thomas. I don't know if they're already online and able to share the screen. Who wants to take over?
Is not online, Thomas is, and I've just promoted him.
So I guess we will start with Thomas, right?
Christophe is, sorry.
Okay. Don't ruin all the fun, so don't start with the questions yet. You know, that's the word. So don't start with the red and green yet.
Yes.
Okay.
Evandro, do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Just for the test. It's I'm ready to start. It's up to you.
Okay, so let me stop sharing so you can share your screen if you need.
Okay, do you have my screen?
Yes, we see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The presentation will be done first by me about the schedule with ISO, and then Thomas will be explaining in more detail the different technical aspect of the progress on the documentation to be issued to ISO. So thank you very much to Thomas for that. I will be very brief, but just to explain the status and where we are with that. First of all, to remind that the status of the IC 4.3, which is now a production standard approved by the standard committee of buildingSMART, and this status is very important for the next step with ISO in terms of process of approval. Where we are in the process of approval, we have the first meeting. In September 2021 to start a discussion of the new release of IFC, and then according to the status of buildingSMART, it has decided to proceed to fast track the submission, which is reduce the time of discussion on the standard for a couple of months. During the discussion we have with the Joint Working Group 12, it was decided to open the discussion with the editorial committee, but I will be back on that on the next slide. In terms of schedule, where we are, the next Joint Working Group 12 in charge to monitor the ballot in ISO is the 20th of September, and and according to the modification of the documentation we have introduced, normally it will be accepted to launch the process of ballot. Will be continued during December and February 23, and process of approval in March 23 to June 23, and publication for July 23. That means that its target is to have the ISO adopted in mid of 2023, which is a very important issue for the stakeholders mentioned by Evandro previously, because I mean that especially for the rail, most of the railway operators in Europe and in China are involved in that and are waiting the ISO approval to establish in their contract that the data to be shared for the digital twin for railway has to be based on IC 4.3. So it's a very important status and amendment for buildingSMART, but also for the construction industry. So where we are presently, sorry, I'm next suivant. Okay. So the action, we have proceeded during June to two actions. The first one, in relation with the ISO expert, to verify, we have created an editorial committee in order to verify the robustness of the documentation regarding the continuity and of the standard in one hand, and second hand with Jim Plum, we verify on all of the party of the documentation that it was fully explained that the new scope of IC it will be there. So the job is now completed. Thomas is going to introduce what are the modifications in the documentation, and they're going to how the process of that. Nothing was really happening on the standard structures. Even it is when it is technical aspect modify, it's really not modifying anything on the schema. That means that for the software vendors, according to the implementation forum, everything is still okay. And they are detailed. So, and now Thomas is going to issue the new documentation for the next editorial committee on next week in order to publish this document to ISO. And we have proceeded with some proposal of editorial aspect on the documentation to have a more clear explanation of what is the content of IC 4.3, not only on civil works for infra, but also for any things regarding facilities and utilities. It means that normally the 6th of September, it will be decided to publish this documentation to the ISO expert in order to launch the process of ballot on the 20th of September. So here on the screen, you have the date I mentioned according to the process of ISO. Just to mention that, but Thomas is going to explain better than me, the methodology we use with the ISO expert to verify the documentation based on two very important things is the question of forward and backward compatibility, and the question of what is the content of the deprecated attributes or entities and so on, just to verify that everything in IC4 is still working in IC 4.3, which is a very important requirements coming from the to the stakeholders and to the end user regarding the new release of IFC. And the job done by the ISO expert, it will be very profitable, and I think that Thomas will be confident that it is a very positive approach and very useful. And the same we have done with Jim Plum, which is proof that the content of the documentation is robust enough. We have not missing anything. Even if sometimes maybe we can have some improvement in the editorial wording, but really the quality of the documentation and the modification of the standard is really robust, and we can verify that everything is still in line compared to IFC4, and we have not broken anything in terms of continuity of the standard. The idea is the following one. For the next step is to proceed to the ballot, to verify in the process of ballot what we can implement, what we can accept in terms of modification in the new documentation compliant with the time schedule, and we'll make the selection of what it is not acceptable, what it is, could be accepted, but for the next release arriving with the next IFC 4.4 regarding tunnel. I don't know if the name will be IFC 4.4, but the release arriving for the tunnel domain, or we can already implement this modification in the release to be published in July 2023. And then, okay, that's all for me. Just to conclude, three things. I don't know if we have a look about that, so I'm going to change that. There is three things to verify, and we have discussed with the ISO expert. The first one is a question of deprecation, and to have a more precise definition of what does it mean, deprecation. Secondly, the question of how to define the compatibility forward and backward. And really what is important at the moment, the real target is to verify that everything produced in IC4 is working in IC 4.3. And we discover also it's something to be discussed with ISO that at the moment, ISO is the standardization is covering everything regarding the standard structure, but the status of the PSET is quite unclear, and maybe we have to have an additional discussion about how to maintain the definition around the PSET and for the next release. It's okay for me, and I hope to not to be too long.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you also for joining on such a late hour from Europe. Is it Thomas taking over now?
Yeah, unless there are any questions on this part specifically.
Question in the room? No? Do we have anything in the chat? Okay, so I guess you can proceed, Thomas.
All right. So, good afternoon there, Boston. Yeah, I want to start off saying that most of what I'm presenting is not really my work or my analysis. We're really grateful for people within the French Standardization Institute in particular, and also Thomas Levy for really doing the actual analysis work. It's been mostly my duty to report on that and finalize the outcomes in the schema artifacts. But you can follow along with the progress we're making on this GitHub issue. You basically only need to remember the repository that I'm hoping you are familiar with by now, and then 505, which is a relatively easy number to remember. So what we did in this joint working group, I see there's, okay, just lay on copy pasting that in the chat, thanks. So what we did, there is of course a changelog available, but it's not really qualified in terms of how it affects backwards compatibility. And this is the work that has been done by these experts. So when a supertype of something changes, or when an attribute is added or, well, deleted, how does that affect backwards compatibility? And that has been a human effort. So as I said, that's mostly been done by the French Standardization Institute. Thomas Liebig did some analysis on the express schema. And yeah, the key takeaway is there were some incompatibilities that needed to be addressed. This is playing along the rules set out by ISO, but also by ourselves. We kind of violated our own compatibility requirements. So here you can get a glimpse of the changelog. Maybe you've seen it before. What we're working with here is a slightly different version. So really an ISO specific version that only considers changes in between of ISO releases. So everything that happened between, I don't know, 4x1 and 4x2 that was reverted again in 4x3, we don't care. We only compare IFC4, Addendum 2, I think Corrigendum 1, with what we're going to submit to ISO. And that is quite a bit of changes, obviously. A lot of new domain entities, but also where rules, a couple of deletions. And the key takeaway here is that there is some sort of assessment sitting behind that certain types of changes are more intrusive than others. And in the end, we didn't really agree on what this matrix looks like specifically. So here we said things like attribute added not at the end is not compatible. Last attribute deletion is compatible. It's a bit subjective, it depends on the kind of parsing framework you use and the kind of toolboxes you use. So we didn't really finalize the specific severity of all these types of changes, but it's important to keep in mind that, the deletion of an entity is much more severe than adding an attribute at the end. That everybody is in agreement on. And then I just wanted to kind of give you 4 examples of the kind of things we've done. So for full transparency, you can read along everything that has happened in this GitHub issue. I just wanted to give a quick idea on the kind of things that has happened. So some things have simply been reverted, as no matter how painful it is. I mean, sometimes the group comes really to the conclusion, we agree, starting tabula rasa, we agree this is a better representation of the semantics, but taking into account the requirements we have set on backwards compatibility, this kind of change is not justified. And that happened, for example, with the door type operation enum, where everything panel was everything, what is it? Everything, So somewhere in 4.3, everything door was renamed to panel. And now we're reverting that back. So everything panel is renamed back into door to give us compatibility with IFC4. In another occasion, an attribute was inserted, but not at the very end. And this is quite specific to the step physical file serialization format, where you kind of depend on attribute order. And we have agreed with ourselves that new attributes introduced in a new schema are added at the end. It does look nicer to have it, clustered lexicographically, but we moved it to the end. Sometimes it's just documentation changes. We have quite a bit of deprecations, and then it's really crucial to have an alternative. If something is deprecated, sometimes that has to happen. We allow ourselves to do that, but then there needs to be a clear alternative. In this case, we deleted something, building element, and we introduced something, build element. And yeah, we really need to make sure that all these kind of things, deletions, deprecations, are correctly annotated with a suitable alternative. I think the majority of the changes we made in this group are of this kind, that just minor documentation changes. Like at some point we deprecated trapezium, is that what it's called? Profile definition, because apparently nobody could really figure out what the semantics were precisely. So we just deprecated it, and then there is a note now saying that in order to represent a trapezium, you have to use an arbitrary profile definition. So quite trivial changes, but it's really also rewarding to have this kind of really systematic alternatives laid out. The biggest incompatibility we have condoned, so to say, is on grid placement. This is a bit hard to read along. I'll try my best to explain this, just in case anybody is interested. So a grid placement is placing another element roughly at the intersection of two grid axes. But the grid axis itself is placed according to the placement of the grid. And in IFC4, there wasn't a link on schema level. There was just a note in the documentation that, hey, when you're figuring out the coordinates of this grid placement, you have to take into account the positioning of the grid. And yeah, this is, for two reasons, this was, well, I would say unacceptable. It's really strange to have something so crucial only captured in a note in the documentation and not in the schema. But also, as you're well aware, in 4.3, we introduced linear placement, which is roughly a similar idea, where you place something, in this case along a curve given an offset, and but that curve is positioned globally itself as well. And for that purpose, they already made the change that basically every type of placement is always relative. And so then in the case of a grid placement, it's going to be relative to the object placement of the grid itself. In case of linear placement, the linear placement is going to be relative to the placement of the alignment. So this is both a unification with between grid and linear placement, and it's also really an important fix in the semantics of the schema. So that resulted in us saying, this change, being backwards incompatible, is so crucial to have that we're just going to accept it as is and make a note somewhere in the deliverable of all the really backwards incompatible changes. There's a couple of more theoretical backwards incompatible changes, like a real number type changing to an integer number type. But yeah, we also kind of see this through the fingers. And that was all from me. Thanks for listening. Any questions?
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, we have one question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So the question is regarding slide 4, that change log that you were showing. Where's that change log coming from?
It is being generated automatically, taking into account the express schema, but also deprecation notices and also PSEC, and in some cases it's enriched with statements from the documentation, like the example of the alternatives I brought up. But the short answer is it's fully automatically generated. So it doesn't rely on, let's say, a log of actual modification that is stored separately. It's derived from comparing the artifacts, the schema. Does that help?
Any other questions? Is there anything in the shop, I guess? Again, thank you, Thomas, for joining on such late hour.
Of course.
Just maybe just one word, Evandro. Just I wanted to say that something for me very important, that the ISO expert, I appreciate a lot the attitude of Thomas to listen the question and to hear about that and to make some proposal of that. And that thing that is to be underlined about that. It's crucial also for the next step to have this approval progressing properly. And thank you very much, Thomas, by the job you have done. It's very, very impressive.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, so let's get back to the agenda again. Okay, so the plan is that now we have till page 3:15 maximum. An interactive workshop is going to happen on Miro board, so make sure to access the board. Make sure to log in so that we have your name. Otherwise we get questions coming from visitors, which is helpful, but just maybe to trace back to the order of the question. So make sure that you log in. So this one we have also the order of the question. So at this point, we can focus. I see that some of you also provide the locations. I think we already have some nice, let's say, crowd from the US. So we should probably consider US dedicated session. Figure out how.
Point on that, given that most of the US people seem to be on the East Coast, they're doing it at 10 in the morning or in European or UK time, trying to do it lunchtime. That works.
Yeah, and then we lose probably.
We'll talk about the time, Andrew. Yeah. Better to have one session. If it's like 7 a.m. East Coast, 10 p.m. and I would get to that.
So lunchtime Europe could see the three of us, right? I mean, Asia Pacific, US, East Coast.
And a single session, I agree with John, having a single session then works so much better than people recording and then joining in, then it's so good.
Yeah, also for us, of course, more preferable not to split the session. Okay. Yeah, 8 a.m. 8 a.m.
Is 11 too late for you?
We can look at it. Huh? Midnight gets a bit late. 11 p.m. I can probably do.
Okay.
Leaves a bit of a night out, so who's
a.m. here would be 10 p.m. Australia anyway.
Yeah, it's just in daylight saving.
I know you already pulled up.
Other input on the time zone issue?
That's pretty random.
Yeah, let's say that this is more of a technical discussions because plenary are recorded anyway, and since they happen with a, let's say, quarterly frequency, anyone can review them after a couple of days. So probably it's more for a technical discussion that we want to try to optimize things. Okay, so yeah.
You could do the sticker first or.
No, okay, I'm going through that now. Okay, so I think let's try to make use of some of the nice Miro functionality. So the workshop is split in, let's say, sessions. We have something to better understand the audience of the forum, objectives, priorities, expectations, and so on. So we will gradually go through these boxes. We will have some voting rounds. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to vote. So again, I'm making sure that we can vote for the first question. So just to guide you, you have some color code saying if you're a developer, fill in the red boxes. If you're a user or not strictly a developer, maybe focus on the green boxes. For some of these boxes, you have a pre-compiled sticky notes. You just have to vote. Now I will enable that. And you can also provide additional sticky notes. So if you see that there is an RFC3 domain that is not captured here, just simply put a new sticky note and other people can vote on that. So let's see if I can enable the voting. We'll select the deep area first. All right. Let's take these. If this works. Able to vote. Work on some elevator music. Everyone vote. There's an arrow between not yet and railway, which is like I don't know how to interpret it. Like not yet, but my interest is in railway. That's how I read it.
Maybe it's further documentation.
Software vendors who don't read the friendly manual. Software vendors don't read the friendly manual.
Yeah, no, we just start working and, you know, look on Stack Overflow and cry.
Okay. That is proving that the voting mechanism is working. Good to know. Okay, so let's try maybe to go ahead and move along these boxes and maybe have a review after that, okay? Also because if we have another presentation in the middle, and then we will go back to the codes and inputs and the post-it. So let's try to get it all at once. So let's go to the next one, which is which categories best defines the area of relevance of your tool. This is something that is the end user are asking for, and I mean able also with this one. If you just spin it up, we can include also the next one, which are implementation challenges. So if you're currently implementing IFC for the 3 and you have a specific challenge, just place a new post-it. Oh no, I cannot do that because that's not voting, so sorry. Again, you can add a sticky note if you don't find the best description of your. First part helps us to understand and assess the audience, because this is IFC for the X, and we have people interested in many domains, in many areas. In the past, was only focusing on rail, but we understand that IFC for the 3 is a larger topic, and we want to balance also the effort and distribution attention that we give to.
The first infrastructure to be broken into rail, roads, and structures, and land development.
Yeah. Again, feel free to add a couple of sticky notes.
I encourage to not get more votes. Personally, just.
But the music is available only with the.
Sticker being for structure.
Or?
Password.
Because, okay, probably if we add something in the middle of the process, you cannot vote for the.
Okay.
We'll make another round just for that. Or you know what, simply after this voting thing, you can go over a sticky note and place a thumb up. So that'll make. Again, if you're done with this box, you can move to the next one. And I think here you can simply add sticky notes about your current implementation. If you're having issues on specific topics, just let us know. At the moment, we have some priorities, some topics in our backlog. Georeferencing is one of them. Containment of alignment and spatial structure. Again, if you go over the GitHub page, you see what we are working on at the moment, but we want to know if there's more. So just let us know. Fine. we don't have any people from Europe joining at this late hour, but we're gonna probably repeat this kind of workshop. So usually great feedback come out of it. So. I see that some of these topics are already high in the priority list of the forum, like your reference. So that's good to know. Maybe you know what, if someone's reading sticky notes from the others, they agree or they think it's nice to prioritize, maybe just go over the sticky notes and just thumb up like this. That's also a good way to know that many people are interested in the same topic. I think you simply click on the sticky note. There's this emoji icon, and you can select the thumb up or the heart, whatever. Express your feelings better. Just one more minute. I think many signals are coming. European people are waking up just for this. Someone spread the voice that there is a nice interactive workshop happening at the moment. So we started to drop forward. I think we can go over the rest of the boxes in next 20 minutes or so and have a break. How does it sound? Less? 20 minutes more? 20? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let the timer finish. And then we move on. We change the music over. That's everything about the challenges. Next session is about priorities. So, same story. You have two boxes. If you're a developer or if you're an end user, you might have different priorities. Simply put a sticky note with your priorities in terms of discussions and events for the forum. Select a different. Always good. Of course, if you're done with that, you can move ahead with the rest of the boxes. A couple of boxes are around the expectation show. So what do you expect by joining this technical discussion? What do you expect to come out of it? And also, we're interested to know what we shouldn't discuss in this sector. Okay, doing maybe a couple more minutes to go through the last two boxes. IFC product X implemented form should not discuss. And there is one last box which is an open input. So anything that you haven't said previously, you can put it here. I'm gonna give it another 3 minutes. And we're heading for the break ahead of time, probably. Yeah, change the music over. Sorry. Great feedback, I have to say, coming along from all the way from questions to inputs and challenges. I think we have a lot to work on.
On the my current implementation, that was not necessarily my current implementation, it was the current implementation of IFC.
Yeah, issues you're aware. Yeah. Sometimes we can have something that are company specific, like you're dealing with specific topics, you're having issues in that specific area. And sometimes it's just something that's totally general, it's complicated, or there are some issues around there. Georeferencing is one of the, let's say, big discussions we're having at the moment. Actually, maybe before we go on break, let's do a quick, I had a question from European people to ask to the US guys, which is, who is already implementing project global positioning concept template? You can say, I don't understand the question. So yeah.
On our side, civil 3D, yes, we are.
Okay.
All civil 3D projects should basically be globally positioned to a coordinate system. Whether or not it's a coordinate system that IFC understands, or it's a local coordinate system created for the project, they all have them, other than noddy examples. On Revit side,
Okay, so for all the others implementing these IFC concept templates, these project global positioning means that your IFC file that you're going to explore will very much likely have a couple of entities, which are IFC map conversion and IFC projected CRS, that should help georeferencing and geolocating your project. So there are some, let's say, disagreement on how these concepts should be implemented. So we wanted to, this is one of the perfect example of what the forum is saying. So something is already there, probably since IFC 4, but there is no consensus on how to fill in a couple of attributes. So we want to either enrich the documentation or provide some formal rules that can be automatically checked again, make sure that the concept template is provided correctly by all the exporting tools. So that's 100% one of the tests that we're going to have. We're going to collect some data sets, but I have to say in this field there is still some slight disagreement when it comes to vertical, let's say, building files and infrastructure files. I think that Andreas in the next presentation will briefly mention a couple of railway use cases that are specifically dealing with this topic. And the good news is that railway people will create a test using the forum as a venue. They will follow the template, they will provide a data set, and will create a test for vendors to take. Of course, in context of these tests, we will define what is good and what is not good in terms of these project global positioning templates. Okay. I think we can have a break of, let's say, an hour. Are you sure they're going to be back? Okay, half an hour. Okay, so that gives me more time to review the inputs, and maybe we can have discussions on the, let's say, highest priorities that come up. Thank you for this part. Enjoy the break.